Himalayas, land of ancient monasteries, land of immense mountains, land of wisdom and mystery. Year after year, one fragment at a time. At the top of the world, while life rushes by, the highest mountains on Earth continue to grow. This imperceptible movement tells a story that began millions of years ago when two giants collided, the Indian Plate and the Eurasian Plate. The result of this titanic collision pushed the ancient seabed upward until it touched the clouds. This is the Himalayas. Not just a simple mountain range, but rather a world suspended between sky and earth, stretching for 2,500 kilometers, or about 1,550 miles, dividing Asia in two. And indeed, it is 5 nations that guard this vertical kingdom. To the west, more precisely in Pakistan, the Karakoram Mountains stand watch over K2, which is called the Savage Mountain. And from here, the Himalayas rise up, dominating the landscape and marking one of the most imposing natural borders on the planet. Toward the east, instead, there is a northern India with Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, and Sikkim, lands of deep valleys and desert plateaus, where ancient Buddhist kingdoms resist the passage of time. At the center, Nepal dominates the heights with 8 of the 14 highest peaks in the world, all above 8,000 meters, or about 26,250 feet, including Everest. The country, in fact, develops like a staircase toward the sky, from the Terry Plains to the Central Hills, all the way to the high mountains. And then there is Bhutan in the eastern sector, which remains an isolated kingdom where the mountains protect centuries of traditions in their deep valleys. To the north, finally, the Tibetan Plateau stretches out at 4,000 meters, or about 13,125 feet, and it is a gigantic water reservoir that feeds the great rivers of Asia. From west to east, this natural barrier is not just a mountain range. Far from it. It is a living system of mountains, which together create the largest concentration of rock giants on the planet. Moreover, 5 religions consider these peaks sacred, and they are Hinduism, Buddhism, Bon, Jainism, and Sikhism. prayer flags are blue like space, white like air, red like fire, green like water, and yellow like earth. And they dance in the wind, scattering prayers into the universe. Even some mountains, like Kailash, are never climbed out of respect for local beliefs. Today, finally, the glaciers are retreating, threatening the water supply for a quarter of the world's population. But the Himalayas, for now, resist. Just like its monasteries, built in impossible places, but with unique earthquake-resistant techniques. It is a truly unique ecosystem that keeps growing piece by piece, reaching toward the sky. But now let us discover the most beautiful and iconic places in this region. Tiger's Nest. A monastery clings to a rocky cliff at 3,000 meters, or about 9,850 feet in altitude, where the air grows thin and thoughts merge with the clouds. In the 8th century, it is said that Guru Rinpoche reached this sacred place on the back of a flying tiger, giving birth to a legend that still today attracts pilgrims from all over the world. The path to reach Tiger's Nest crosses through a forest of blue pines, while prayer flags dance in the wind, carrying prayers toward the sky. In the final stretch, a suspension bridge crosses a precipice of 900 meters, or about 2,950 feet, leading tourists toward halls decorated with paintings, which tell stories of demons and deities. The monks here continue their ancient rituals while incense fills the air and drums mark the passage of time. Thimphu. In the heart of modern Bhutan, Thimphu is the only capital in the world without traffic lights, and it still lives with the rhythm of its old traditions, in a present that refuses the frenzy. From atop the hill, the gigantic statue of Buddha Dordima watches over this city with its 51 meters, or about 167 feet, of height covered in gold and bronze, guarding inside it more than 100,000 small Buddha statues, almost like a sacred womb. Then there is Tashicho Dzong, which tells two parallel stories, which intertwine with each other. During the day, in fact, the fortress houses the government offices of the kingdom, while at sunset it transforms into a sanctuary for 350 Buddhist monks who study the sacred texts. During sacred festivities, the central courtyard of the Dzong comes alive with the cham dances, where monks wear elaborate masks and colorful costumes to represent ancient Buddhist legends, transforming the fortress into a mystical theater. The white walls rise up along the Thimphu River, while the towers dominate the surrounding valley. Dochula Pass. At 3,100 meters, or about 10,170 feet, where clouds meet the earth, 108 white stupa monuments form a perfect circle, which mark the border between two worlds. On one side stretches the capital Thimphu. On the other side, we find the subtropical valley of Punakha. On clear days, the eastern Himalayas reveal their full majesty, while pilgrims usually circle the stupas clockwise, leaving offerings of yak butter and rice. The wind carries the echo of prayers through this place, where time seems to stop among the prayer flags. Punakha Dzong. The waters of the Mochu and Phochu rivers converge at the point where the most sacred fortress of Bhutan rises. In 1637, the architects chose this strategic location, where the terrain naturally rises between the currents. From that moment, this temple has guarded the most precious relics of Bhutanese Buddhism, protecting them through the centuries. In spring, jacaranda flowers cover the courtyards, while monks daily cross the wooden bridges, headed toward the ceremonies that mark the rhythm of monastic life. The stairs, moreover, lead to majestic halls, where golden Buddhas tower over the faithful, and the central temple preserves the mortal remains of Dzong, who is the founder of Bhutan. Sikkim and Gangtok. The small Indian state of Sikkim opens up like a balcony onto the Himalayas, overlooking the third highest mountain in the world, Kanchenjunga. For centuries, it remained an independent kingdom until 1975. Its forests, thick and humid, host the rare red panda, while the valleys are fragrant with wild orchids and cardamom, cultivated and sold in local markets. Nestled along a mountain ridge, Gangtok is the capital of Sikkim. Here, the Lal Bazaar market bustles with merchants and colors, while the Rohtang monastery, not far away, continues to preserve the Kagyu Buddhist tradition in a complex that recalls the grandeur of lost Tibet. A cable car soars over the city connecting the neighborhoods, and from above you can see the roofs that climb along steep slopes. Darjeeling. At 2,050 meters, or about 6,725 feet on the Himalayas, rises the world capital of tea, the last jewel of British colonial India. The steam toy train from 1881, a UNESCO heritage site, still winds along the mountain railway, which made this city famous. The city streets blend English colonial heritage with Himalayan culture, filled with the sense of tea, incense, and freshly made dumplings. Finally, the Tibetan monastery of Gum preserves the statue of Maitreya Buddha, a symbol for the refugees who found a home here after the invasion of Tibet. Gangotri. Here, the Ganges River is born from the Gangotri Glacier at almost 4,000 meters, or about 13,125 feet in altitude. The water descends from the Himalayan mountains and crosses India for 2,000 kilometers, or about 1,240 miles, all the way to the Bay of Bengal. Every year, thousands of pilgrims reach the village of Gangotri to immerse themselves in the sacred waters and pray in the temple dedicated to the goddess Ganga. The Hindu tradition, in fact, considers this river a divinity which purifies the soul and washes away sins. Rishikesh and Haridwar. These two cities mark the border between the Himalayas and the plains, where the Ganges changes character and slows its course. Rishikesh hosts hundreds of yoga schools and ashrams, including the one where the Beatles studied meditation in the 60s. Here, every evening, the Lakshman Jhula suspension bridge fills with people who witness the Arti, the ceremony of lights on the river. A little further downstream, there is Haridwar, whose name means gateway to God, and which welcomes every 12 years a pilgrimage that gathers millions of faithful who bathe in the waters of the river. Moreover, the steps that descend toward the water crowd daily with pilgrims who immerse the ashes of the deceased in the sacred waters to free souls from the cycle of reincarnation. Shimla. The ancient mountain city where the British took refuge to escape the heat of India rises at 2,200 meters, or about 7,220 feet, wrapped in an almost constant fog. A historic railway, built by the English, crosses through 102 tunnels in the rock, creating one of the most spectacular train journeys in India. The main street of the city maintains its colonial appearance intact, while troops of monkeys have made the roofs their territory. On the highest point of the city, finally, a Hindu temple with a gigantic sacred statue watches over the valley, while further below the traditional market comes alive with stalls selling spices and local teas. Manali and Rohtang Pass. One of the most spectacular roads in India climbs with 51 hairpin turns toward the clouds, separating two completely different regions, the green valley of Manali and the desert plateaus of Ladakh. Rohtang Pass is a crossing point with snow that is often present during the year, and for centuries now, merchants and travelers have used this passage as a bridge between India and Tibet. In the old part of Manali, instead, temples built in wood 500 years ago recall ancient Indian legends, while not far away, waterfalls and thermal waters rich in sulfur spring forth. Local life is still based on mountain agriculture and pastoralism, traditional activities that today coexist with tourism. During summer, moreover, shepherds bring their flocks through the pass, following the ancient transhumance routes. Spiti Valley. The Spiti Valley reveals an ancient story in its mountains. Its marine fossils from 100 million years ago, in fact, testify that here, once upon a time, there was an ocean. Perched on a rock at more than 4,000 meters, or about 13,125 feet in altitude, rises Ki Monastery, a fortress temple built more than 1,000 years ago, where Buddhist monks preserve ancient sacred texts in rooms lit only by traditional butter lamps. In this remote valley, some of the highest inhabited villages on Earth are found, which remain completely isolated for half the year, when winter brings polar temperatures of 30 degrees below zero, or about minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. The river that gives the valley its name, moreover, has carved very deep gorges between the mountains, creating one of the most extreme landscapes in the Himalayas. Leh-Ladakh. Leh is the capital of the ancient region of Ladakh, also called Little Tibet for its Buddhist culture. The city's main monastery, Thiksey, is a 12-story palace built as a copy of the Dalai Lama's palace in Tibet. There is also Leh Palace, which dominates the city from above with its 9 floors of 17th century Tibetan architecture. While Lama Yuru Monastery is one of the oldest in Ladakh and clings to the rocks at 3,500 meters, or about 11,485 feet in altitude. The territory extends between desert valleys and Himalayan passes that also exceed 5,000 meters, or about 16,400 feet, with air so rarefied that trees barely grow. Zanskar Valley. A valley so remote that it remains isolated for 2/3 of the year. In winter, the Zanskar River becomes an ice highway, which monks travel to move between monasteries, with temperatures that drop to 30 degrees below zero, or about -22 degrees Fahrenheit. The villages accumulate during summer supplies of barley and yak butter to survive the harshest months. When the ice melts, however, the valley awakens, and herds of yaks are led to high-altitude pastures where grass grows lush under the Himalayan sun. Nubra Valley. Beyond Kardung La, one of the highest motorable passes in the world, lies a valley where 2 humped camels walk among the dunes at 3,000 meters, or about 9,850 feet above sea level. Diskit Monastery has watched over the valley for 350 years, while apricot trees bloom in the villages, creating an oasis of green in the high-altitude desert. The caravans that traveled the Silk Road stopped here to get water supplies and rest before crossing the Himalayan passes. The Shyok River, finally, draws meanders between the mountains, while white sand dunes contrast with the barren mountains that reach 6,000 meters, or about 19,685 feet. Pangong Lake. A salt lake divides the border between India and Tibet for 134 kilometers, or about 83 miles. Its waters change color during the day, and in winter they transform into an expanse of ice, where salt crystals create plays of light under the sun. The lake is a fundamental stopping point for migratory birds, which fly between Central Asia and India. On its shores, the local nomadic tribes of the Changpa bring their yaks to pasture, which are enormous bovines adapted to life at high altitude. Mount Everest. The highest mountain on Earth, towers at 8,848 meters, or about 29,029 feet, between Nepal and Tibet. Base camp at 5,364 meters, or about 17,598 feet, is the starting point for all expeditions toward the summit, where mountaineers spend months to acclimatize to the altitude. Since 1953, when the first two explorers reached the summit, thousands of people have attempted the same feat. To get there, one must cross the Khumbu Glacier, which is a river of moving ice, which continuously creates new crevasses. At this altitude, the air contains so little oxygen that even breathing becomes difficult. But from March to May, base camp fills with colorful tents full of hikers, waiting for the right moment for the climb. Khumbu Valley. The highest inhabited valley in the world extends like a natural corridor toward Everest, dotted with ancient Sherpa villages which cling to the Himalayan slopes. Along this sacred route, villages and communities guard millennia-old traditions, while their stone houses and decorated monuments testify to a culture forged by high altitude. The yak caravans transport goods between these remote settlements, following ancient trade routes which for centuries have connected Tibet to Nepal. Here there is also Tengboche Monastery, which occupies a perfect panoramic point to admire the highest mountain on the planet. The Buddhist monks begin praying before dawn, while the sun gradually illuminates the surrounding peaks. Langtang Valley. This valley is slowly being reborn after the devastating earthquake of 2015, which caused a destructive avalanche. The villages have been rebuilt and the paths restored to allow pilgrims to return. In this valley, yaks and mules graze at high altitude, sharing the territory with the very rare snow leopards. Moreover, a large glacier feeds lakes considered sacred, where the faithful immerse themselves to seek purification. In Kyeonjin Gompa Monastery, finally monks preserve ancient Buddhist traditions, with chants and ceremonies that resonate among the mountains. Kathmandu Valley. This valley unfolds at 1,400 meters, or 4,593 feet, surrounded by peaks that reach 8,000 meters, or 26,247 feet. Here, Hindu temples and Buddhist stupas coexist, built when Europe was still in the Middle Ages. The streets vibrate with three-wheeled carriages and motorcycles. While at Durbar Square, pigeons perch on statues from the 17th century. Every morning, the faithful light butter lamps before the deities, and the monastery bells ring alongside the car horns. The dust here usually mingles with the incense. The 2015 earthquake brought down ancient pagodas, yet the reconstruction proceeds stone by stone. Pokhara and Pheva Lake. The most famous tourist city in Nepal develops on the shores of a lake, with a view of the Annapurna chain. In the depths of Pheva Lake are found ancient submerged temples, while in the center on a small island rises the Barahi Temple, reachable only by boat for morning ceremonies. The local fishermen still weave past traditions, while in the sky, paragliders exploit the warm air currents that rise from the valley. Moreover, on the hill stands the Peace Pagoda, built with materials coming from countries that have known conflicts, such as Japan or Sri Lanka. Annapurna Circuit. A trekking route of 230 kilometers, or about 143 miles, which starts from the tropical plains at 800 meters, or about 2,625 feet, and reaches all the way to the eternal ice at 5,416 meters, or about 17,769 feet. The local ethnic groups transport supplies on suspension bridges, which cross very deep gorges. In the stone-built villages instead, inhabitants offer travelers traditional butter tea. The path passes through various forests in which rare species like the red panda live. while the villages seem now frozen in time with their Tibetan traditions. Muktanath Temple. At 3,800 meters, or about 12,467 feet, rises a unique temple where the Hindu and Buddhist religions coexist peacefully. From the temple spring 108 fountains shaped like bullheads, where the faithful bathe regardless of the cold. Next to the sanctuary, a large statue of the Buddha, adorned with orange ribbons and facing the snow-covered mountains, welcomes pilgrims as a symbol of meditation and universal compassion. Here, Buddhist monks and Hindu priests celebrate their rites in the same spaces, witnessing a centuries-old tradition of tolerance. Chitwan National Park. Where the Himalayan mountains end, the Chitwan jungle begins, which extends for 932 square kilometers, or about 360 square miles. Usually, Indian rhinos cross the Rapti River with their characteristic single horn. Bengal tigers instead hunt at night, while elephants create paths in the forest that other animals will use later. In the rivers swim gharial crocodiles, an ancient and very rare species. Moreover, the forest rangers patrol the park on elephant back, and it is precisely thanks to their protection that rhinos have increased from 100 to 645 specimens. Namche Bazaar. Nestled at 3,440 meters on a horseshoe-shaped mountainside, Namche Bazaar is the gateway to Everest. This village offers spectacular views of Himalayan peaks including Everest, Lhotse, and Ama Dablam. Historically, it was an important trading center where Sherpas exchanged products with Tibetan merchants before the conquest of Everest in 1953 transformed the place into a fundamental stop for mountaineers from all over the world. The heart of social life is the lively Saturday market, where local products and traditional crafts can be found. Here the Sherpas, who are famous for their climbing abilities, keep Buddhist traditions alive despite tourism. Potala Palace, and Rohtang Temple. At 3,700 meters, or about 12,139 feet in altitude, an artificial mountain rises in the Tibetan sky of Lhasa. 1,000 rooms, 10,000 shrines, and 200,000 sacred statues hide behind walls 16 feet thick, creating the largest treasure of Tibetan Buddhist art. To build this marvel, 7,000 workers and 1,500 artists transported giant logs onto the sacred mountain, while the walls, painted with pigments obtained from ground precious stones, capture the sun's warmth for the frigid winters of the plateau. Every day, hundreds of pilgrims perform the Kora, the sacred walk around the palace, praying and prostrating in this ritual that unites body and spirit. In Rohtang Temple, instead, is preserved a 7th century Buddha statue, brought here by a Chinese princess. It is also located in Lhasa, like the previous palace, and here pilgrims usually burn incense and pray, following the sacred path around the temple. Mount Kailash. At 6,638 meters, or about 21,778 feet in western Tibet, rises a mountain considered sacred by 4 different religions. Pilgrims walk the complete circuit around the mountain, covering 52 kilometers, or about 32 miles, to reach spiritual enlightenment. The route crosses very high passes, where the air is so rarefied as to make breathing difficult. Moreover, no one has ever climbed the summit, out of respect for local religious beliefs. Yamdrok Lake. It is one of the highest lakes in the world. It extends for 72 kilometers, or about 45 miles, forming a figure that resembles a dragon, according to local tales. From the lake emerge various islands. While on the shores, nomadic herders bring their yaks to pasture. The lake is an important stop for birds that migrate between Central Asia and India, but during the 5 winter months instead, the frozen lake becomes a natural road to reach isolated villages. Cho Oyu. It is the 6th highest mountain on the planet, and beneath its surface, enormous glaciers move slowly, like frozen rivers. The Sherpas, instead, who are the famous high-altitude people, cross these glaciers transporting equipment for expeditions. Avalanches continuously change the mountain slopes every year, and the wind creates white clouds by lifting layers of snow from the peaks. Namso Lake. At 4,718 meters, or about 15,479 feet, is found the lake situated at the highest altitude in the world, and the nomadic herders, Drakpa, move with their herds of yaks in the grasslands around the lake itself. Here, salt crystallizes on the shores, forming figures that sparkle in the sunlight. In winter, when the lake freezes, the faithful can walk to the 5 sacred islands, and the salt forms shapes that glisten in the sunlight. Hunza Valley. In northern Pakistan survives an ancient valley, surrounded by the highest mountains on the planet. The fields are built in terraces on the slopes and supported by ancient walls, while a system of canals distributes glacier water to all cultivated lands. Here we also find ancient stone fortresses, which recall the time when local kings controlled the trade routes between China and India. The main river, moreover, has created very deep gorges, and suspension bridges connect the villages on both sides of the valley. Among these, the Hussaini Bridge is considered one of the most dangerous bridges in the world. It is a shaky footbridge of wooden planks and ropes suspended tens of meters above the tumultuous waters of the Hunza River. Nanga Parbat. It is the 9th highest mountain in the world, and its rocky walls rise vertically for 4,000 meters, or about 13,125 feet, creating the highest wall on the planet. Moreover, an enormous glacier 15 kilometers, or about 9 miles long, descends from its flanks. Climbers have found 8 different routes to reach the summit, but this mountain has one of the most tragic histories in mountaineering. The mountain is so large that it creates its own weather system, with storms that can last for weeks. The nearby villages finally live to the rhythm of the mountain seasons, with the light of dawn taking about an hour to descend from the summit down to the valley. Fairy meadows. At the foot of Nanga Parbat Mountain, we find an alpine meadow reachable only through one of the most dangerous roads in Pakistan. This green place is located at the base of what mountaineers call the Killer Mountain due to its dangerousness. The glaciers arrive right to the edge of the meadow, where in the summer shepherds of the Gujar tribe bring their sheep. Here, the only sound that breaks the silence is that of avalanches falling from the walls, and of glacier water forming small streams crossing the meadows. Rakaposhi. It is like a gigantic ice pyramid which dominates the Hunza Valley. Its glaciers descend down to 3,000 meters, or about 9,850 feet, where farmers cultivate among the boulders while ibexes climb on the walls. The mountain itself blocks the cold northern winds, creating a milder microclimate that allows the cultivation of apricots and other fruits up to surprisingly high altitudes. In summer, finally, the shepherds of the Wakhi tribe bring the flocks to high altitude. Khunjerab Pass. It is the highest paved border crossing in the world, and it is the passage point between Pakistan and China through the Karakoram Range. The modern road follows the ancient Silk Road trade route, with clouds that are often found below the level of the pass, and trucks that instead struggle to climb due to lack of oxygen. For 6 months of the year, the pass is closed due to snow, while border guards live in isolated outposts lashed by the wind. K2. The second highest mountain in the world, with a height of about 8,611 meters, or about 28,251 feet, is considered the most dangerous to climb. Only 300 mountaineers have reached the summit, while 87 have lost their lives in the attempt. An enormous glacier, 60 kilometers or about 37 miles long, descends from the mountain, continuously molding the landscape. Here, storms can block climbers for weeks in extreme conditions, while base camp, built on the moving glacier, must be continuously relocated. Concluding this visual journey through the Himalayas, we have moved from the charm of its remote villages to the most celebrated places and landscapes, discovering together not only locations, but also curiosities that make every corner of this region unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the majestic beauty of this sacred mountain range.